So unfortunately, this is our first failure. So just like everything, they're only as junk as people let them be. Welcome back to Lost Cause Ranch. And we are back with our regular cab, LR4. Regular cab, you might say. Yep. It's pretty short. Last week, we permanently attached this Longranger Truck Cab to our LR4, making it a true pickup truck Land Rover. We also welded in a couple plates so we could bolt in a supporting roll bar to go inside the cab, and that is today's project. We are going to start, yes I said start, the roll bar. Today is full of some ups and downs. We're going to start with some downs and with some ups. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter video, but that is our right because it is a holiday weekend. We're going to take a little time off and kind of roll with the punches, I guess. But let's get into what is the first failure we've had on the LR4 truck. We started this a couple months ago. We've been putting a lot of work in. Everything has gone great, hasn't it, Chet? Today, not so much. Who would have thought that by cutting the LR4 in half, we would have limited the space inside. So it is a much tighter work area back here, but we're gonna start with getting some measurements so we can build that little rear roll bar that we talked about last time. That's what we put those plates into the floor for. So we just need to get a few measurements. So we're about 7 feet, so 14 feet. We need to go down to the steel shop to buy that tube. Round tube usually comes in like 21 foot sticks. I don't have a way to transport 21 foot sticks, so we're gonna have to get it chopped down to fit on the trailer. So I just wanna make sure when we go to have it chopped down that we're not cutting it too short. 14 feet should be sufficient. That'll leave us with enough for a crossbar. Perfect. It's cozy in here now. Well, that kind of shoots our plans for this week. I can't exactly build that roll bar without tube. And they're closed. Pretty empty down here. Kind of forgot. It's Easter this weekend. A lot of stuff's closed on Good Friday. But I guess it's calling audible time. I do commend them for that, though. That's pretty stand-up of a business to give all their employees a 3-day weekend on Easter. Not a lot of companies like that anymore, and letting people have that versus a day of making money is pretty awesome. Except when you're trying to build an LR4 truck. But we can find other stuff to do. We just need to figure out what to do for today now. And what are we gonna do? Build a roll bar. We were able to scare up enough tube to make something happen on the roll bar. Now I wanted to go grab some stuff to make a cart for the cab so we can put it on casters, get it off the hoist, but that'll just have to wait for a different day. I'm happy that we found enough to at least tackle what we really wanted to make happen today. So we need to get this bad boy back out. Speaking of heavy, is there anything more fun than watching me struggle? Probably not. So this is going to be a pretty similar operation to when we bumped up the actual roll bar. The one that is mounted to the flatbed and chassis mounted underneath. This is the one that's going to provide the majority of our actual structural roll protection. The one we're doing inside here now is going to add some amount of protection, but if we ever do anything goofy, this one will hit first. It is wider and higher than the internal one. The nice benefit we're going to have from the internal one is we're going to tie in to our pillar on our roof with the sunroof and getting everything kind of shored up inside here. So we'll just add some additional stiffness to the cab along with a awesome place to make some mounts for those modules that we have to get in here. There's a lot of wiring going to a lot of modules. So the fabrication process is going to be largely similar to the last roll bar. We're going to take our overall length of 167 1/4 and cut that in half. So 167 1/4 divided by 2 is 83 5/8. 83 5/8, and we'll double check that by measuring from the other side, and we match. So we marked our center because we're gonna bend from the center out. This is gonna be slightly more complex than the last roll bar because it is gonna have 4 bends total instead of 2. We're gonna come at the roof line straight across, and we'll bend down to follow this pillar, and then somewhere in this neighborhood on the inside, so roughly in this area inside, and then we're gonna shoot back and catch our plates down there. And to attach to those plates that we welded in last week, I have a corresponding plate that we cut out on the CNC plasma. This bolts right to that, and our tube will be welded to this. So that roll bar will be completely removable, which makes this pretty easy to build, relatively speaking. And that is why I chose to do it with the cap permanently attached. So now we have this rear cap in the location that it is gonna end up in, because it's there, it's mounted, it's not going anywhere. So we'll be able to form it nice and tight against that rear cap, and then not have to worry about clearancing for welds, because we can just yank the thing out. And that's really the main reason why we pulled the seats out. So we'll have plenty of real estate to work in there. As much real estate as a single cab LR4 will give you. So to start off, we just need to get a few measurements, and the first one is gonna be what angle we're gonna bend to match this side profile. So we'll take our angle gauge, and it looks like we're gonna be about 70 degrees. So 70 degrees should be a good starting point. Then the other measurement we need is gonna take a tape measure, and we have our center of the cab marked, and we're just gonna shoot over to the side profile, and we are 28 inches. So we need to stay within 28 inches from the outside of the bend coming down, so 56 inches overall. And we're just gonna load it in there. It sure would be nice if the weather would ever just cooperate and stay warm. We've had 80-degree weather, 20-some degree weather, all in with the span of a week. Right now it's like 40 degrees out, so not quite warm enough to just straight up work outside, but we're also space limited, so the door is open. Did you guys know that we were space limited? I don't know if I've mentioned it yet before. And we just get to start the process of pumping this guy up a bunch. Like I said, we're gonna aim for 70 degrees, so we'll probably have to hit 72, 73 to account for a little spring back. And we're at 19 so far. So I'll catch you in a few minutes here. Just like last time, I probably should have just ran over and ran the air compressor hose, and I could have just clicked a button. We'll just do it the old-fashioned way. This cylinder is an old school Harbor Freight one, probably 12 years old at this point, and it is starting to show its age. It needs the seals replaced, but we're just gonna forego that. We have that 110 portable hydraulic power pack, so at some point in time we just need to retrofit a cylinder in for that. Boy, would that make life easier. And we're creeping up on it here, just about there. We're running out of sealing though. We just gotta manipulate everything. Move this guy around some. Good thing it's on wheels. We just propped up our rear a little bit to give us what we need. All right, we're gonna go with that. We're pretty close with our bend and also with touching the ceiling. So we'll just back off the tension. Afraid of that. Houston, we have a problem. I was kind of worried about that. That's obviously no good. So I'm gonna explain what happened here, and then we'll move on to what we're gonna do. We got a little wrinkle. So that tube that we went ahead and found is 1 3/4 ERW, which is a welded seam tube. It's kind of hard in the light, and if we look here, you can see our weld seam. Typically on roll bar stuff and things like that, I like to use a DOM. Drawn over mandrel, which is what our roll bar headache rack here is made of. This is drawn over mandrel, which is a seamless tube. The seamless tube is a stronger tube because obviously it doesn't have a weld point to break. Bending ERW is possible. The only problem is we have a tight centerline radius die, which puts this at a tighter, more compact bend. And then we have 1/8 inch wall tube, which is strong enough. Like I said, I'd prefer to have drawn over mandrel but for this application, the ERW would have been just fine. It is a supplementary support bar in this situation because that DOM is actually doing the protecting. This is more of like a tie-in structure-wise. So would have been perfectly fine had that not happened. We are not going to use a wrinkled tube. With ERW, there is many schools of thought on how to bend it. You usually don't want the weld on the inside. Sometimes you can get away with putting the weld on the outside of the bend, but most people like to put it on what is called the neutral part of the bend. This is the sides, because this will be the least amount of movement of that welded seam. And anytime you weld something, you affect the temper, I guess, of the steel around that weld. So the heat changes how the steel reacts. So this is going to be a much stiffer point of the steel that doesn't want to bend and stretch as much as everything else that hasn't been welded. If we would have had something like a 3/16 of an inch wall tube, that probably wouldn't have been an issue even with the ERW, and possibly even on this particular tube, if we would put the weld seam on the inside, it may not have bent too. It may have bent worse. From my personal experience over the years, you almost need to test each run of tube that you have with where to place the weld seam when you're running a tight radius die. So unfortunately, this is our first failure on the truck project. And it's just a minor failure. It's not even that big a deal. But that's going to bring me to my next point. If something is fighting you, like this is, even if it's out of your control fighting you, sometimes it's best to just step away and let it sit. We're not going to try and fix or cobble this anymore. We obviously tried to go down to our steel supplier and go pick up the correct tube, and that didn't work out. Rightfully so. I'm happy they were closed for their employees and their families. But then we tried to find something to make it work. And then we have this. So at this point, it is the day before Easter. I'm just going to call it. This is going to be a short video. We're just going to enjoy the rest of the weekend. I apologize that it's kind of a letdown, but this is real life. But what we are going to do quick before we go home is rip our valve covers and upper timing covers off the donor engine, just to make sure this thing isn't a complete pile of junk. I guess we'll give you something to look at. We talked to the guys at Lucky 8 this week and got some parts coming. So we'll be able to assemble this guy and get it ready to go as soon as we have the cab ready. But I just want to make sure there's nothing alarming inside here. With how it ran, I don't suspect anything's going to be too scary. But what this kind of brings me to is one of the most valuable lessons I've learned over my years of building stuff, working on stuff. I've been doing this for 22 years now. Or at least like working on cars for 22 years now. Coming pretty close to 23. And that is when something is fighting you, that sometimes it's just smarter to step away and just come back at a later time and tackle whatever that project is. When you start to feel something just go wrong, it's good to just have a reset. That's at least what I've learned over the years. I've messed up plenty of stuff throughout my life, and the reoccurring theme to those screw-ups is usually pushing something that is fighting you. I'm not saying the path of least resistance is always the way to go. I obviously like chaos and challenging things, but if it just doesn't feel right, sometimes it's just best to step away. So if there is nothing else you take from this video, take that. If you're fighting it, step back, reevaluate, give yourself some time to think and work through what is going wrong. You'll come back with a clear head, not mad, and things just usually pop off and go right. Wow. That was kind of unexpected. At least something's going right. These are usually way worse to pull out, especially with any amount of miles on them. We should have just called it quits on the roll bar for the weekend as soon as we couldn't get the steel tube that we were looking for. Pretty crazy for those to come out that easy. But I was really wanting to push forward on the roll bar because everything's been going so well on this project. We've been making such great progress on the truck, so I just wanted to keep that momentum going. But hey, not everything can go perfect. But what is perfect is dealing with this fuel line when the engine isn't in the LR4. That thing's usually kind of a pain. This will be our first peek inside the engine. Good. That's actually pleasing to see. Nice golden tint to it. We're not built up with a ton of sludge. We don't look like we have a ton of wear on any of the cam lobes. I'm happy about that. At least something went right. Hopefully this side goes as well as the other. Smart person probably would have pulled the engine out, but never claimed to be that. Now that was probably one of the easier sets to remove out of all the LR4s I've done. If you're not familiar with them, these are direct injections. So the tip of the fuel injector actually goes right into the combustion chamber, and it has this little Teflon seal that needs to seal the compression so you don't have a compression leak out of this hole. So they are in there pretty tight, and then if they have any amount of time on them, they just kind of get gunked up, corroded in there, stuck, especially in our neck of the woods. They are usually a big pain when they're in the vehicle, especially like the last couple cylinders on each side, and you're hammering, and every once in a while you end up breaking an injector doing it. Not too often, but known to happen. And hopefully this side is just as good, and I'd say it almost looks better. We can't complain about this guy one bit. Now behind here is what I'm really curious about. It doesn't actually matter because all the timing stuff's getting replaced anyways. I don't have any service history on this, so I don't know if this has ever been done. Everything seems tight. See if we can peek down in there and see our tensioner. So it appears that it is on the factory guides, at least what I can peek down and see. Let's take this side off and see if I can get a better look. I think we're gonna have to get the lower cover off to be sure, but I'm guessing by the looks of everything, it is on the factory stuff. It does not appear to have the steel button. I'll run the part number quick. And that white LR4 that we pulled the engine out of was a 2010. So a first year 5-liter LR4, which is the worst LR4 you can buy. The timing chains are gonna go to crap instantly. At least that's what the internet says. If we look at how clean that engine is in there, this thing, would you believe, has 167,000 miles. This image right here is going to tell you that they used a high quality oil and they changed the oil well before the factory recommended service interval. The original timing chain design is a poor design. It is a steel piston of a tensioner going onto an aluminum guide. It is going to fail prematurely. But this right here is proof that oil changes make a bigger difference than anything else. We switched all our customers to 5,000 mile oil changes on 5-liter and 3-liter supercharged Land Rovers. Pretty much anytime we had a timing chain job to do on a 5-liter, it was all stuff that was factory dealer serviced. At least the stuff that happened early on. We did them as early as 70,000 miles on something that had perfect factory recommended service records. So just like everything, they're only as junk as people let them be. I'm not gonna go say that 5-liters don't have timing chain issues and most of them don't need it, but it's just a case of the factory extended service intervals across the board on any manufacturer, not just Land Rover. BMW does it, everyone does it now. In my opinion, if you like your vehicle, the savings from doing half as many oil changes as what I believe you should isn't quite worth it. But speaking of liking your vehicle, is that not freaking awesome? Let's tape it up here and step back. Is that not gonna be the ticket to making this thing look so freaking good? We gotta play with the angle a little bit, and then we'll make another black applique like the door has to make up this space that ends up being there. I don't know the exact location where the window is gonna end up. We do have to get the roll bar in here and then make sure we clear our pillar and everything, but that just dresses up that big blank spot a ton. And even better yet, that's a factory Land Rover piece right there. Let me know down below if you know where that came from. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing, and I'm sorry it was a bit of a short video. A little bit of a letdown, probably more for me than you. I really wanted to get that roll bar in, but that's just the way life goes sometimes. Sometimes you just gotta step back and then maybe just enjoy the weekend some. So we won't take as much up of your holiday Sunday. This week, we do have a trip planned for tomorrow, Monday. And that'll be next week's video. It's gonna be worth watching. Trip usually means getting stuff. I probably don't need stuff, but that's never stopped me before. But we will catch you on Wednesday with our midweek video with a little bit of update going on at the shop. We do have a cool little exhaust project, so we'll probably tackle that on Tuesday, so that should go up Thursday. Trying to keep everything straight. Hope you enjoyed your Easter, if that's what you celebrate. If not, hope you just enjoyed your Sunday.